At my brother's engagement dinner, they sat me at the kids' table. No one knew I had just signed a $215 million deal. But when his fiancée recognized my name, everything stopped. If you've ever been underestimated, stay with me. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about reclaiming your worth. The Bluebird restaurant shimmered with candlelight and silverware, every corner echoing the quiet hum of wealth and status. Olivia Mitchell, 32, adjusted the sleeve of her charcoal dress as she stepped into the private dining room reserved for her brother's engagement dinner. The room was filled with old family friends, distant relatives, and a stream of laughter that seemed to flow exclusively in Jason Mitchell's direction. Jason, the golden child, had just been promoted to chief resident at one of Chicago's most prestigious hospitals. His fiancée, Sophia, was poised, elegant, and worked in healthcare acquisitions for a firm Olivia knew all too well. Their matching charm made them the couple everyone admired. Olivia had no illusions about her place at this celebration. She was the overlooked sister, the quiet one, the one who still hadn't figured it out. "You're here," her mother, Diane Mitchell, said with a tight smile, handing Olivia a place card. "We've put you next to Cousin Margaret. She remembers you from that summer in Lake Geneva." "That was 15 years ago," Olivia murmured, but her mother had already turned to adjust a flower arrangement. The table stretched like a runway through the center of the room. Jason and Sophia were seated near the head, surrounded by parents and other VIPs. Olivia's assigned seat was 2/3 down, next to the dessert table and a column that obscured half the room. It wasn't unkind, just convenient out of the way. As the dinner progressed, the toasts began. Richard Mitchell, their father, stood first. "To my son, who has never ceased to make us proud, a true Mitchell, and to Sophia, whose brilliance and heart make her a perfect addition to our family." The applause was genuine. Olivia clapped too, smiling, because that's what was expected. Inside, her stomach twisted. She had built a multi-million-dollar health tech company from her dorm room. She had hundreds of employees, but none of that mattered here. Here, her achievements were silent, invisible. She tuned out the next round of praise. Uncle Ben retold the story of Jason saving a choking neighbor at age 8. Aunt Lisa mentioned Sophia's recent article in a medical journal. No one asked Olivia how work was going. Not that she expected them to. She remembered being 16, crouched in the corner of the attic, the only place in the house where she felt unnoticed enough to focus. There, surrounded by insulation and old luggage, she wrote her first lines of code on a second-hand laptop she'd saved for all summer. She'd named the file Invisible Tower, HTML. She hadn't known why at the time, but now it felt painfully poetic. Olivia sipped her wine slowly, watching Jason make the rounds. He shook hands, laughed at every story, kissed Sophia on the cheek with practiced charm. She wondered if he remembered the time she stayed up all night debugging his college website project when he had the flu. Probably not. He had gotten an A. She had gotten a thank you and a pat on the head. From her seat, Olivia could hear Sophia discussing her work. "We're currently in talks to acquire a new tech platform that could revolutionize healthcare communication," she said brightly. Olivia blinked. She knew that deal. Knew the numbers, the tech specs, the integration plans. It was her company they were acquiring. But Sophia didn't know. No one at the table did. The irony made her smile. A quiet, private kind of smile. Not smug. Not even satisfied. Just still. Margaret asked her something about the weather, and Olivia responded politely, keeping her eyes on the flickering candles. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just tired of always being measured against the wrong yardstick. As the main course was served, Diane leaned over to whisper, "Darling, maybe wear something a bit more festive next time. Something that says, ambition." Olivia smiled tightly. Her blouse was tailored Italian silk, her shoes were handmade, and her earnings outpaced both her parents combined. But her mother didn't know. She still saw Olivia as the girl who quit debate club to take a coding boot camp. When dessert arrived, Olivia excused herself and walked to the window. Outside, the city skyline twinkled with opportunity and indifference. She thought about the attic again, about the girl who once believed she had to prove herself to be seen. Maybe she still did, but not tonight. Tonight she would hold her silence like a gift, her presence a quiet defiance. Because sometimes, the most powerful person in the room isn't the one being toasted, it's the one quietly choosing not to speak yet. As she turned back toward the table, someone caught her eye. Sophia, looking at her with a slight frown, as if trying to place a familiar face. Olivia held her gaze just long enough, then smiled and returned to her seat. Let them have their evening. Her time was coming. I wasn't born into a family that celebrated divergence. In the Mitchell household, there was only one kind of success: tangible, traditional, and preferably adorned with a plaque or certificate. My father, Dr. Richard Mitchell, was the kind of man who inspired awe. He wasn't just a surgeon, he was the surgeon. Colleagues sought his opinions like students sought their professor's approval. And my mother, Diana, wasn't far behind. A brilliant corporate lawyer, her career victories were as neatly aligned as her color-coded closet. Then there was Jason, me older brother, the golden child. 4 years ahead of me, he was the one who could do no wrong. Jason played cello, captained the debate team, and shadowed doctors in high school. He was the embodiment of the Mitchell legacy, and my parents worshipped his every accomplishment. I, on the other hand, found wonder not in textbooks but in lines of code. At age 13, I built a rudimentary website about marine animals. It had blinking headers and sound effects that I thought were groundbreaking. I excitedly showed it to my mom, hoping for the kind of praise Jason received when he scored a 95 on a chemistry exam. "That's cute," she said, barely glancing at my screen. "But how are your math grades? You need to keep those up for college applications." It wasn't that my parents didn't love me, they did, in their own way. But they didn't see me. Not in the way that counts. The defining moment came when I was 16. I'd spent months preparing for the National Youth Programming Challenge, a prestigious competition with participants from across the country. I stayed up late most nights, often coding in the dimly lit space under the stairs, my secret haven. That corner, cluttered with old boxes and unused sports equipment, became my sanctuary. It was the only place where my ideas weren't interrupted or dismissed. The day I won the competition, I came home beaming, clutching a crystal trophy and a congratulatory letter from the committee. When I shared the news over dinner, my father looked mildly surprised. "That's nice, Olivia. But let's talk about Jason's medical internship this summer. He might be working under Dr. Kessler. Can you believe it?" Just like that, my triumph vanished beneath the weight of Jason's next milestone. There was another time, 8th grade, I think, when my homeroom teacher praised my logic and problem-solving skills during a parent-teacher conference. She told my mother, "Olivia has a real gift for understanding systems. She thinks like an engineer." My mother smiled politely and responded, "We're trying to get her more focused on math. She struggles with staying consistent." I sat there, cheeks flushed, wondering if she'd heard a word of the praise. Apparently, excellence only counted if it came with a GPA boost. While Jason's walls were adorned with ribbons and plaques, mine had sticky notes scribbled with ideas for apps and drawings of user interfaces. I wasn't looking to impress anyone. I was trying to build something meaningful. Still, the absence of acknowledgement hurt more than I let on. It wasn't the lack of affection. I always got birthday cakes and hugs. But the warmth was conditional, reserved for milestones my parents understood. In their world, tech was a hobby, a diversion, something I'd outgrow once I got serious about my future. Even holidays weren't safe. One Thanksgiving, while relatives gushed about Jason's achievements, I mentioned that I was learning Python and had built a simple inventory system for my school's library. My aunt blinked. "Oh, like barcodes and stuff? That's handy." Jason jumped in, explaining that I was probably just doing it for fun. "You know Liveaway's tinkering." They all laughed. That night, I deleted the code from my laptop. It was a petty move, and I regretted it the next morning. But it symbolized years of internalized doubt. I wish I could say I responded with resilience, that their dismissals only fueled me. But at the time, it stung deeply. I began hiding my accomplishments, pretending I was just scraping by. It was easier than watching their eyes glaze over whenever I tried to share. They had a picture-perfect version of who I was supposed to be. Olivia Mitchell, future lawyer, perhaps a judge, certainly someone in heels and power suits. The girl in the basement, typing until 2 a.m., didn't fit. So I stopped trying to fit, and I started planning. Quietly, methodically, and away from the glare of family expectation. Little did they know, the girl they thought of as lost was about to chart a course that even their wildest ambitions couldn't predict. Olivia stood on the quiet platform of the suburban train station, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a freshly printed acceptance letter tucked safely in her journal. She was heading to Illinois Institute of Technology, a decision made not from rebellion, but conviction. Her parents had wanted Yale or Columbia somewhere with a pre-law track that would mold her into the family's next courtroom star. Instead, Olivia chose a path less admired: computer science. The train pulled away, and with it, the shadows of expectations she had never agreed to. At Illinois Tech, Olivia found what she'd never had at home: freedom. Freedom to stay up all night debugging code, freedom to explore cloud architecture, and freedom to dream audaciously without being measured against Jason. It was in her sophomore algorithms class that she met Emma Rodriguez, a whip-smart coder with a dry wit and a quiet fire. Their connection was instant, rooted in late-night coding marathons and caffeine-fueled debates over back-end infrastructure. Where Olivia had been told technology was a distraction, Emma saw its revolutionary potential. They started with an idea scratched on the back of a Napkina platform that could bridge gaps in healthcare communication. Emma's mother had suffered a near-fatal misdiagnosis due to missing data between two clinics. Olivia listened intently as Emma, with tears in her eyes, declared, "If no one's building a door for us, we build the wall and carve our own way through." That moment birthed Next Tech. For months, Olivia and Emma balanced coursework with startup life. They coded through spring break, took meetings in coffee shops, and taught themselves the legal basics of incorporation. Olivia's parents barely knew the name of the app she was creating. When she mentioned her project over Thanksgiving dinner, her mother responded, "It's good to have hobbies in college." Meanwhile, Jason had just been published in a medical journal, and the table erupted in applause. Next Tech launched its beta the summer before senior year. Emma's garage became their office. They landed a small contract with a local clinic that reported a 20% reduction in communication errors in the first month. It was working. But at home, Olivia remained between majors in her parents' eyes. When she brought up her project again, her father asked, "Is it like Facebook for hospitals?" The conversation ended there. Despite the indifference, Olivia pressed on. Each line of code she wrote became an act of self-definition. The app improved with every update. By graduation, they had signed with a regional healthcare provider and were featured in a small tech column titled, "Two Young Women Changing the Future of Medical Communication." But nothing changed at home. Jason's graduation from med school included a gala. Olivia's graduation passed with a card in the mail. At her own celebration dinner, her parents spoke more about Jason's residency than her startup. Still, Olivia remained focused. She moved into a shared apartment with Emma and took freelance coding jobs to fund their vision. The app was now called Next Tech officially. As its adoption spread, Olivia and Emma secured a modest round of seed funding from a pitch competition they won at MIT. A respected hospital administrator told them, this software could save lives. And yet, at a family reunion that summer, a distant aunt asked, "Are you still playing with apps?" Olivia smiled politely and said yes. Her strength wasn't loud. It wasn't applauded, but it was rooted in certainty. Olivia was building something real, not for validation but because she believed in it. Every day, as she coded from that cramped kitchen table or took investor calls in the hallway, she remembered Emma's words. They weren't just writing code. They were writing a new chapter of possibility not just for healthcare but for themselves. While Jason received framed diplomas and handshakes, Olivia earned respect in server logs, user reviews, and reduction statistics that no one at her dinner table ever asked about. And that was okay, because Olivia knew. Sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin in silence. By the time Olivia turned 24, she and Emma had moved into a shoebox apartment above a laundromat in Chicago's South Loop. Their kitchen was mostly used to boil water for instant noodles, and their living room doubled as the nerve center of Next Tech. They had no marketing budget, no fancy office, and certainly no team, just 2 women, 3 laptops, and a belief that they could change the healthcare world. Olivia often coded through the night, her fingers aching, her eyes burning from blue light. Emma, ever the practical one, took on the challenge of pitching to investors, but doors didn't open easily. They walked into countless rooms full of middle-aged men in suits who smiled politely, nodded at their slides, and asked, "But who's the tech lead?" Even after watching Olivia field every technical question, the irony didn't escape them. In an industry that prided itself on innovation, bias remained archaic. "If no one's building a door for us, we build the wall and carve our own way through," Emma had said one night after yet another rejection email. They started entering competitions, sometimes just to be heard. At one such event, hosted by a university hospital network, Olivia registered under the name O. Mitchell, anticipating less skepticism if her gender wasn't revealed. It worked. Their software caught attention. Their first real breakthrough came from a mid-sized hospital in Milwaukee. During the video call, Olivia presented the full demo, including back-end architecture and live user testing. When the administrator asked to speak to Mr. Mitchell, Olivia smiled and said, "You're speaking to me." There was a pause, then laughter, and then a contract. It was a small deal, but it marked the turning point. Word spread. Other clinics began calling. The pilot data from Milwaukee showed a 32% drop in miscommunication-related delays. That kind of number turned heads, but Olivia, true to her nature, kept her name quiet. On paperwork, on press releases, and even pitch decks, she remained, "Oh, Mitchell." It wasn't self-erasure, was strategy. She wasn't hiding, she was calculating. Let them underestimate her. Let them assume. Every assumption would become their undoing. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was weaponry. At home, her parents still believed she worked in tech support. Her father sent her job listings at Amazon. Her mother continued to talk about how good she'd be in corporate law. Olivia smiled during those conversations and changed the subject. Emma's family, by contrast, had turned their garage into a co-working space and brought them snacks during marathon coding sessions. Olivia spent weekends there, where support wasn't conditional on understanding, just offered freely. That warmth fueled her. As Nextech's user base grew, Olivia hired their first developer, then a part-time UI, UX designer. Every decision was deliberate, every penny stretched. They refused to compromise on their vision. They were approached by an early-stage fund that liked their metrics but wanted a male CTO. Olivia declined. A week later, they received an offer from a female-led healthcare angel group. They accepted and celebrated with store-brand sparkling water and microwave pizza. Eventually, a well-known medical journal published a study showing Nextech's software cut emergency room transfer errors by 41% in a regional hospital chain. That story made it into healthcare forums and even caught the attention of a tech podcast. But when the interviewer asked to speak to the male engineer, Olivia politely redirected him to Emma and rescheduled. "Why don't you just put your face on it?" Emma asked one day. "You deserve the spotlight." "Because I don't need the spotlight to know we're winning," Olivia replied. By now, their tiny apartment had turned into a symbol proof that success didn't require applause. It only required persistence. Each night before shutting down her laptop, Olivia would glance at the framed print above her desk, the first code she ever wrote, printed from her childhood bedroom printer and smudged with ink. It reminded her of the journey from the ignored teenager in a blazer 2 sizes too big at parent-teacher conferences to the architect of a system reshaping how hospitals communicated. There were still no parades, no proud parental speeches, but there were metrics. There were saved lives. And there was the certainty that Olivia Mitchell O. Mitchell was no longer building in the shadows. She was building a legacy. And no one saw it coming. The private dining room at Bluebird gleamed with crystal chandeliers and polished wood paneling, every detail curated for prestige. Olivia stepped in quietly, dressed in an elegant navy jumpsuit, not flashy, but confident. The Mitchell family had already gathered, her parents radiant with pride over Jason's engagement to Sophia Winters, the poised and impressive director of acquisitions at Horizon Health Technologies. Olivia scanned the room and, as expected, found her place card at the far end of the table, next to Cousin Margaret, across from a flower arrangement large enough to block half her view. The important guests were seated near the center, her brother, Sophia, their parents. Still, Olivia smiled. She'd prepared for this moment her entire life. The toasts began with her father extolling Jason's virtues as a physician. Her mother added a few sharp anecdotes about Jason's childhood ambition and Sophia's remarkable poise. Olivia nodded politely through it all, sipping her water while watching the slow realization forming on Sophia's face. Sophia's gaze lingered on Olivia, her brow furrowed. During a lull in conversation, she leaned forward, hesitant. "Sorry, Olivia, right? Is your last name Mitchell?" The question sliced through the room's buzz like a scalpel. Jason looked confused. "Of course it is. She's my sister." Sophia's eyes widened. "Wait, you're the Olivia Mitchell? The founder of Nextech?" Jason blinked. "What are you talking about?" Sophia turned to her fiancé, then back to Olivia. Your sister is the CEO of the company we've been negotiating to acquire for $215 million. Olivia Mitchell, she's the one who built the platform we're investing in. The room froze. Wine glasses half raised. Forks motionless. The silence was deafening. Jason's jaw dropped. No way. Olivia? Nextech? Their mother paled. Their father sat back, stunned. Olivia remained composed. Yes, she said simply. I co-founded Nextech. Sophia exhaled, almost in awe. You're the reason the board approved the deal. Your platform reduced patient miscommunication by over 40% in trial hospitals. We've been tracking your company for over a year. I didn't know. I had no idea. Jason looked at her, mouth still agape. Why didn't you ever tell us? Olivia met his gaze evenly. Because it didn't matter to you. Until now. Her mother's voice cracked slightly. We thought you were doing it support. Olivia shrugged lightly. That's what you wanted to believe. Sophia, still stunned, sat back in her chair. We've been calling you the ghost founder. Now I get it. As murmurs rippled around the room, Olivia turned to her mother. Their eyes locked not in defiance, but in something new, respect. For the first time, there was no judgment, no disappointment, no script to impose, just awe. And it wasn't just about the $215 million. It was the recognition that Olivia had built something undeniable, something powerful, something they could no longer ignore. Jason leaned forward. So, what happens now? Olivia smiled softly. Now, you finish your dinner, and tomorrow, we close the deal. The room erupted again, but this time, in questions, congratulations, and apologies wrapped in laughter. Olivia answered what she wanted, deflected what she didn't. She didn't need this validation. Not anymore. But it felt good to see their faces. To finally be visible. She caught Sophia glancing at her again. I hope this isn't awkward. I really admire what you've built. Olivia's smile deepened. Thank you. That means a lot. She knew this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of being seen, on her own terms. And in her mother's lingering stare, no longer coated in skepticism but in something akin to pride, Olivia found what she never thought she'd see, acceptance earned, not granted. For the first time, she wasn't the girl behind the laptop. She was the woman who had built the future quietly, brilliantly, and undeniably. The following morning, Olivia arrived at the Drake Hotel, its brass fixtures gleaming in the soft morning light. She was early, choosing a seat with a view of the Lake Michigan skyline. Her navy coat, classic and composed, echoed her mood. Today's brunch wasn't about food. It was a reckoning. Her parents arrived exactly on time, dressed impeccably as if for a court hearing. Her father offered a stiff hug, her mother an air kiss, and they sat. A waiter poured coffee in silence. We've been talking, her mother began, tone rehearsed. And we realize now how much you've accomplished. Her father nodded. We always knew you had potential. Olivia took a slow sip of coffee. You didn't know. You hoped I'd change. There's a difference. Her mother bristled. That's not fair. We were always proud. Were you? Olivia's voice remained level. I won the National Coding Championship in high school. Remember what you said at the parent-teacher conference that week, Mrs.? Bradford praised my innovation and you asked why I got a B in calculus. Her parents fell silent. The clink of cutlery on fine china filled the void. We were trying to prepare you for the real world, her father offered. No, Olivia replied, setting her cup down. You were trying to fit me into your world. There it was, truth, raw and gentle. The waiter returned with eggs Benedict, breaking the tension. Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out something small, wrapped in soft cloth. She unwrapped it slowly and placed it on the table. It was the forgotten coding trophy. A little worn, the gold plating faded, but still intact. Her mother blinked. Is that from high school? Olivia nodded. You never asked where it went. It stayed in a drawer, like everything else that didn't fit your idea of who I should be. Her parents exchanged a look, shame, realization, perhaps a beginning. You've built something remarkable, her father finally said. We didn't see it then, but we do now. Olivia's eyes didn't waver. I didn't need you to see it to make it real. I've already done it. Her mother softened. We want to understand now. If you'll let us. A pause. Olivia exhaled. I'm not here for apologies. I'm here because I wanted to say this out loud. I don't need your permission to succeed. The words hovered between them, firm, not cruel, liberating. For the rest of the brunch, conversation turned to lighter things. Travel, Jason's wedding plans, her mother's rediscovery of yoga. But something had shifted. Olivia didn't need their approval anymore. And because of that, their respect began to grow quietly, and perhaps genuinely. As they parted, her mother touched her arm. That trophy. You should put it somewhere visible. It's part of your story. Olivia smiled. It always has been. Walking away from the hotel, she felt no anger, no longing, just clarity. She'd claimed her voice, not through rebellion, but truth. And in that truth, she found peace. Brunch didn't rewrite history, but it acknowledged it. And for Olivia, that was enough to start something new. Later that afternoon, back in her apartment, Olivia placed the trophy on a bookshelf above her desk. The golden figurine looked small against the backdrop of her now mature achievements, but its presence glowed with a new sense of belonging. She opened her laptop and replied to a young woman who had reached out after the Tech World article. The girl had written, "My parents don't believe in my dream of working in AI. They say it's not stable. What should I do?" Olivia typed, "You don't need them to believe. You just need to believe enough for the both of you until your results speak louder than their doubts." She hit send and sat back, looking at the trophy once more. Her success was no longer a secret, but the strength that built it that had always been hers. And now, others would see it too. As evening fell, Olivia lit a candle in her living room and scrolled through new mentorship requests. One message stood out, a single line. "You made me believe I can do it too." She smiled gently. Change wasn't just personal anymore. It was generational. A ripple turned wave. And for the first time, she felt not just understood, but also remembered. Not for the struggle, but for the strength. The girl who once coded in the shadows had become a beacon. And that was just the beginning. A week after brunch, Olivia was reviewing her quarterly projections when the intercom buzzed. "It's Jason," her assistant said. "He's here with wine." Olivia blinked, surprised. She hadn't expected her brother to show up, at least, not unannounced. Moments later, Jason stepped into her office, clutching a bottle of Cabernet and looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Thought I'd stop by," he said, offering a sheepish smile. This seemed like the right kind of olive branch. Olivia gestured to the couch by the window. "Have a seat." Jason looked around, clearly stunned. The office was sleek, with floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and the hum of quiet productivity. It wasn't what he had imagined when he'd said Olivia worked somewhere in IT support. "This place is... wow," he said, settling into the couch. "Yeah," Olivia replied, pouring them both glasses. "I built it." They clinked glasses and took a sip. For a moment, silence. Then Jason leaned forward. "I owe you an apology." Olivia waited. "I've been a terrible brother. I bought into this story about you being lost or underachieving. I never asked, never tried to see past what Mom and Dad said." Olivia exhaled. "That's true, but you're here now." He nodded. "You know, I used to be jealous of how free you seemed. I thought you didn't care what they thought. I didn't realize it was a different kind of pressure." "I cared," Olivia said. "I just got tired of performing." Jason looked around again. "And you've done something incredible. Sophia keeps talking about you like you walk on water." Olivia chuckled. "Sophia's kind, but it took a lot of failing quietly before any of this worked." They talked for hours about work, about childhood, about who they had become. Jason opened up about his own pressures, about being the golden child and never feeling like he could make a misstep. For the first time, Olivia saw the cost of perfection from the other side. He glanced toward a photo on her desk, a candid shot of Olivia and Emma laughing in their first startup garage space. "You know," he said softly, "I've had every tool handed to me, but I've never created anything from scratch. Not like this." Olivia smiled. "We all build in our own ways. I just had to do it with fewer blueprints." Jason leaned back, sipping his wine. "I've learned more about you in the last week than in the past 10 years. I'm sorry it took so long." "You showed up," Olivia said simply. "That's a start." He pulled a small box from his coat pocket. "Sophia wanted you to have this. Said it might help your next big pitch." Inside was a sleek, handcrafted pen engraved with her initials. Olivia blinked back unexpected emotion. "Tell her thank you. It's beautiful." Jason stood to leave, lingering at the doorway. "I'm really proud of you, Liv. Not just for the company, for holding on to yourself." Olivia met his eyes. "That means more than you know." As the door closed behind him, she felt lighter. Some bridges, it turned out, were worth rebuilding. That night, she placed the pen next to her childhood coding trophy on the bookshelf. Symbols of where she began and how far she'd come. And in between, the quiet power of forgiveness, freely given and deeply earned. Olivia had never expected family dinners to feel comfortable. But over the next several months, that's exactly what began to unfold. Once a month, she hosted Jason and Sophia in her apartment simple meals, shared laughter, and an atmosphere strikingly free of the old tension that used to define their interactions. Jason often brought dessert, sometimes homemade, sometimes clearly rescued from a bakery on the way over. Sophia brought wine and warmth, always asking Olivia about Nextech with genuine interest, never once implying it was beyond her grasp. Olivia appreciated that. Their bond grew not just as future sisters-in-law, but as professional allies. They shared war stories about board meetings and difficult clients, and over time, a rare trust emerged. One evening, after dinner, Jason glanced at Olivia's bookshelf. Among the curated shelves of startup books and design magazines, one small item stood out, her high school programming trophy. "You kept it," he said softly. "I almost threw it away once," Olivia replied. "It felt pointless, but now, it reminds me where I started." Jason nodded. "I'm glad you didn't." Something had changed. The validation Olivia once craved didn't define her anymore, but its absence no longer stung either. That absence had been replaced by something richer earned respect. Meanwhile, her parents were trying in their own ways. Her mother began reading books about startup culture and leadership. During one Sunday call, she asked Olivia, "What does a Series B funding round mean?" Not condescending curious. Later, she even quoted something from a tech podcast, clearly making an effort to understand Olivia's world. It wasn't a reconciliation wrapped in a bow. Olivia still found herself navigating old patterns. Her father sometimes launched into unsolicited advice about scaling teams or protecting IP, often phrased more like instruction than dialogue. But now, Olivia had the language and confidence to push back gently. "Dad," she'd say with a smile, "I've got a whole legal team for that." And he would chuckle, slightly abashed, and nod. There were setbacks, too. One dinner turned awkward when Olivia mentioned turning down another acquisition offer, and her father frowned. "Are you sure that's wise?" he asked. Olivia bristled, then paused. "Yes, I know what I'm doing." Jason backed her up. "Dad, you've seen the numbers. She's not guessing she's leading." The breakthrough came during a board meeting at Horizon Health Technologies. Olivia had been invited to present Nextech's growth plan for international expansion. It was the first time her name appeared on the investor deck as Olivia Mitchell, founder and chief innovation officer. A few days later, a letter arrived, handwritten, from her mother. "Olivia, I watched your presentation. Sophia sent us the link. You were poised, brilliant, and utterly in command. I know we weren't always able to see you clearly, and that's our failure, not yours. I want you to know, I see you now, not just for what you've built, but for who you've become. With admiration and love, Mom." Olivia read it twice, then once more. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. She folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer beside her coding trophy and the engraved pen Jason had given her. These were not trophies. They were milestones, proof not only of what she had accomplished, but of what her family was learning to become. Not perfect, but real. And finally, a place where she could just be Olivia. Not the disappointment, not the tech support girl, but the daughter, the sister, and most of all, the woman who had quietly rewritten what family meant. After months of steady growth and personal healing, Olivia realized it was time to give back. Not in the form of donations or speeches, but through mentorship. She remembered all too vividly the loneliness of being the only girl coding at the back of the class, the looks of confusion or dismissal, the subtle ways her dreams had been undermined. So she launched Code Forward, a mentorship program for high school girls interested in STEM. The program offered workshops, coding boot camps, and weekly mentorship calls with Olivia and her network of tech leaders. The first session was held in a sunlit community center, with rows of teenage girls clutching laptops and notebooks, eyes bright with curiosity and hope. Olivia stood at the front not as the CEO of a $1 million startup, but as someone who had once been exactly where they were. One of the girls, shy and sharp-eyed, raised her hand timidly. "Miss Mitchell," she asked, "how do you get your parents to take you seriously? Mine think I'm just playing games." The room went quiet. Olivia smiled, kneeling beside the girl. "You don't wait for them to see," she said. "You build something so powerful that the world can't help but look. And when they do, they'll see everything they missed." The girl nodded slowly, and something shifted in the room. Olivia wasn't just mentoring them, she was showing them what was possible. Each session, she poured her story into lessons. The power of persistence, the value of being underestimated, and the quiet strength in carving out your own path. But she didn't glamorize the journey. She told them about the nights she cried in silence, the rejection emails, the loneliness of not fitting into anyone's mold, and she told them how it was worth it. Emma joined in, leading product design workshops. Sophia helped teach negotiation tactics. Even Jason made a guest appearance, explaining how he learned to listen better as a brother and now, as a doctor seeking tech solutions. Olivia's program quickly drew attention. Local schools began integrating her curriculum. Universities invited her to speak. But more than the accolades, it was the messages that touched her. Handwritten notes from girls who had chosen computer science majors. Emails from parents saying, "I finally get it." One girl named Tanya returned for every session. She had grown up in a small town where computer science was barely a subject, let alone a career path. By the end of the year, Tanya had built her own app to help students track mental health resources. She credited Olivia's mentorship for giving her the courage to apply to a competitive tech program. Another girl, Marisol, had been the only Latina in her robotics club. She told Olivia that seeing a successful woman of color in tech had given her the strength to keep showing up, even when she felt invisible. Parents, too, began to shift. Some attended the final showcase event, where students presented their projects. There, Olivia witnessed the transformative power of visibility not just for the girls, but for the adults learning to see them. In a quiet moment after one session, Olivia stood by the window, watching the girls laugh and work together. She saw herself in each of them, uncertain but resilient, eager yet cautious. She thought of the trophy, the pen, her mother's letter. None of those were the destination. They were reminders. Of the girl who kept going, of the woman she became, and of the legacy she was now shaping. She didn't need to shout her story. She lived it. And in doing so, she lit a path for those still finding their way. Before leaving the community center that day, one student approached her with a handmade bracelet. "To remind you," the girl said, "that you're changing more lives than you'll ever know." Olivia held the bracelet in her hand, its beads warm from the girl's touch. She smiled. "No," she said gently. "We're changing them together." Years passed. Nextech expanded beyond what Olivia had ever imagined. Their products were now used in hospitals across continents. Their research featured in journals and at tech summits. Olivia could have stepped down. She had offers to sell the company, to take early retirement, to live a quieter, more luxurious life. But she didn't. Because Olivia had discovered something more valuable than comfort purpose. Her days were no longer driven by proving herself to her family, but by uplifting others. She stayed on, not as the CEO, but as a mentor in residence. Her office became a hub of conversation and connection. Interns would drop by for advice. Young engineers, especially women and people of color, sought her out not just for career tips, but for stories about how to stay brave when no one believes in you. She started recording weekly video journals titled Letters to My Younger Self. In one, she spoke directly to 16-year-old Olivia. "I know you're tired of feeling invisible, of trying so hard to be seen, to be heard, to be enough. But hang in there. You'll become someone you're proud of. They'll see you one day, but more importantly, you'll see yourself first." She signed it. "We did it. Finally." That entry went viral, shared by teachers, parents, and even former classmates who messaged her to say, "I wish I had known what you were going through." At the next company summit, Olivia gave the keynote. Standing in front of a sea of employees, she told them, "People once said I failed, that I didn't follow the path, that I was stubborn, misguided, difficult. Maybe I was, but I didn't need them to say I succeeded. I just needed to feel it. The applause was long and loud. But Olivia didn't linger in the spotlight. Instead, she spent the rest of the evening walking among her team, asking questions, offering encouragement, and listening. She knew the true work wasn't the billion-dollar valuation or the keynote speeches. It was in the quiet moments. The young woman who applied for a tech job because of Olivia's videos. The father who told his daughter, "You can do this just like Olivia Mitchell." And so she continued. Not because she had to, but because she could. Because the light she built wasn't just for herself. It was for anyone who had ever been told they weren't enough, and for everyone still trying to believe they are. Sometimes Olivia would walk the corridors of Nextech late in the evening, when the lights were low and the building hummed with quiet energy. She'd glance at the conference rooms filled with brainstorming teams, the whiteboards etched with wild ideas and tentative diagrams. She remembered when all of it had been just her and Emma, scribbling code and dreaming big in their cramped apartment. Her footsteps would take her past a wall, now filled with photos each one, a face of someone who had mentored, created, challenged, and led. At the center was a frame with no picture, just bold lettering. This wall belongs to those who dared before they were believed. Sometimes she paused there and smiled. Letters from mentees continued to pour in. One was from a girl in rural Montana who had been told STEM wasn't for her. Now she was a data analyst at a climate research institute. Another came from a young trans woman who said Olivia's story gave her the courage to pursue her dream job in a biotech firm. In interviews, when asked what kept her going, Olivia's answer was always simple. Because I remember what it felt like to have no one clapping. On her 50th birthday, the company surprised her with a digital Archivia living timeline of Olivia's contributions, quotes from mentees, early product iterations, and a special message recorded by her parents. In it, her father said, "We didn't always understand you, Olivia, but we've never stopped learning from you." Her mother added, "Thank you for being the light you once needed." That night, Olivia sat in her office, rereading old journal entries, glancing now and then at the bracelet given to her by one of her mentees. She opened a new entry, dated simply. To the girl who thought she wasn't enough. Dear Olivia, we did it. You were never the failure they mistook you for. You were the spark before the fire. You held onto your voice when no one was listening. Now, you've built something louder than applause, a legacy. And they see you now. But more importantly, you saw yourself first. With pride. You. She hit save, then closed her laptop. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the quiet revolution that had begun in a teenage girl's bedroom, with lines of code and a dream no one believed in. But now, it lit up hospitals, classrooms, and minds around the world, because Olivia Mitchell had never needed the world's permission, only her own.